Hello everyone, I am Animesh Garg from UC Berkeley Laboratory for Automation Sciences, and I'm here today to talk about applications of algorithmic automation for treatment of cancer. Cancer affects all major organs of human body like head, nasopharynx, lungs, and abdomen. It is estimated that about 1.6 million people will get cancer and about 700,000 people will die from some form of cancer in the United States alone every year. WHO estimates 9 million cancer deaths in 2015, making cancer a leading cause of deaths across the world. 1 in every 6 men today will be diagnosed with prostate cancer at some points in their lives. This goes on to show the pervasive nature of the disease. However, the good news is that prostate cancer is one of the easier varieties to diagnose. There are a variety of treatment options available like surgery, thermal techniques, and internal and external radiotherapy. Brachytherapy is a type of internal radiation therapy. This is used for treatment of tumors in various body sites like cervix, breast, lung, prostate, and urological cancers. Our study focuses on the application of algorithmic techniques on prostate cancer. However, these methods are equally applicable on other organs as well. In a clinical procedure for prostate HDR brachytherapy, hollow needles are inserted one at a time into the prostate. The insertion is made manually by a physician under the guidance of a transrectal ultrasound probe, which provides real-time imaging. To help guide the needles to the proper target, the standard approach uses a needle template, which is a rigid device with paddle holes that helps control the needle trajectory during insertion. However, the template restricts the number of possible insertion locations and directions. This often results in puncture of obstructions like penile bulb, urethra, and urinary bladder. This results in the side effects like trauma, edema, incontinence, and impotence. Recently, a template-free freehand approach was developed by Dr. Joe Shu. However, this approach requires a high degree of skill acquired over years of experience, and using a template is still the standard approach in clinic. Prostate cancer has a very high incidence rate. About 250,000 new cases are registered every year in the US itself. Out of these, about a quarter of them are treated with brachytherapy. However, surgeons are not being trained at such a high rate, resulting in a large shortfall. And as I mentioned, current methods of brachytherapy results in various side effects, and we would like to integrate principles of automation to reduce these side effects. Automation seeks to improve reliability and quality of processes. Our goal is to automate high dose rate brachytherapy. A new algorithm from our lab optimizes needle configurations using Skew-Lines instead of parallel needles. This results in sparing trauma to healthy tissue and still deliver prescribed dose of radiation to the cancerous tissue. Further, we autonomously implant the computationally generated configuration with a specially designed robot. So far, we have discussed the background in brachytherapy and motivation behind this study. The rest of the talk will follow this structure. Starting from the related work, I will discuss the problem objectives, optimization algorithms, robotic implants, and results. As Professor Choi mentioned earlier today, automation plays a very important role in improving the quality of medical procedures and at times taking the state of the art forward. Today's sessions on biorobotics have some very interesting applications of automation, like the works on algorithms to transport biological cells to be presented by Chaudhary et al. From Maryland, and stiffness characterization of living cells from Felikes, Weber and group from ETH at Zurich. There have been a considerable number of works in the area of radiation dose planning where the problem is to place radioactive seeds to control dose distributions. However, not much attention has been paid to how to insert needles to get a better dose distribution. In standard brachytherapy procedure, the clinician inserts needles based on experience rather than computation. And existing works on needle planning discuss mainly use of parallel needles. A very recent work from our lab by Siauw, Cunha, and Goldberg forms the basis of this study, where we plan for needle configurations using Skew-Lines. There have been a number of attempts to introduce automation in brachytherapy earlier. These robots have focused on positional accuracy using parallel needles. There have been robots which can insert needles at a continuum of locations and angles, but most of them focus on low dose rate brachytherapy. Here, only one needle is inserted at a time, and we need to implant a complete set of needles before inserting radioactive source in high dose rate brachytherapy. We have introduced an end-to-end automated system compared to the existing paradigm of teleoperation. Next, I would like to discuss in more detail the problem objectives of this study and the algorithms used. Some fundamental assumptions which we make in this study are: we know the dose distribution models for the radioactive source. We use a gelatin-based mock-up for the human anatomy for experimentation with the robot. It is called the prostate phantom. It is an anatomically correct model, and it is assumed that it mimics tissue stiffness properties. And finally, a predefined region is provided for needle insertion by the clinician. We are given a patient to start with. We would need to generate a 3D model of the patient using a CT or an MRI scan. And we are also given the quantitative description of the prescription from the clinician after dose planning. We would now need to compute a needle configuration for the given anatomy. This configuration should meet clinical dose objectives upon implant and also avoid puncturing healthy structures. And we would execute the plan on the prostate phantom to evaluate the plan and compare the actual results with planned dose distributions. The NPIP algorithm performs the needle configuration computation. Given an anatomy, we need a needle configuration which is collision-free inside the body, covers the prostate densely enough to deliver radiation dose to all of prostate volume, and finally avoid puncture. Hence, we propose the use of skew lines along with parallel needles. We start with a grid of parallel needles and a set of non-parallel needles originating from the corners of square entry region. Starting with the target, we first select all the needles in the robot workspace and also lying within the entry plane. Then, out of this set of needles, we eliminate the candidates which intersect the healthy structures. This reduced set of needles is termed as candidate needle set. The prostate volume is discretized into voxels, with each voxel in the prostate indexed as PI. Now we have the candidate needle set, with needles indexed as NK. The radioactive seed can be located at a set of discrete locations along the needles. These locations, combined with the amount of time it stays there, decides the dose distribution. A needle is said to cover a prostate volume Pi when there exists a location H on the needle such that it is less than delta distance away from the prostate location. From the candidate needle set, we have to choose a subset of needles eta such that all the volume of prostate is covered with at least one needle location. These requirements form a set cover integer program where we want to minimize the number of needles such that at least one needle covers every prostate volume and there are no collisions between needles. We also propose a trauma metric which is defined as the volume of needle in a healthy tissue. Since the choice of needles also minimize puncture, hence no puncture results in zero trauma during planning. Dosage prescriptions are made according to clinical standards. The quantification of treatment objectives results in specification of radioactive dose as volume of organ S, receiving amount of dose D. The objective here is to maximize target dose, minimize dose to healthy structures. This optimization forms an integer program as described in our group's previous work. Now we have a needle plan. We need to execute the plan autonomously because manual insertion of Skew-Line configurations is not feasible. A robot is much more accurate in performing this task. We have used the AccuBot R&D designed by Professor Dan Stoianovici at Johns Hopkins University. It is a specialized robot that is designed for the task of needle insertion and uses special hardware which minimizes backlash in movement and has a resolution of 0.01 mm. The robot has 7 degrees of freedom and has a rotating center of motion, allowing the robot to pivot at the point of insertion. However, the robot was designed for manual teleoperation by the physician, bringing the robot at the point of insertion and then controlling insertion using a joystick. We automated the robot kinematics to allow for autonomous operations. We calibrated the robot arm in a position where the needle insertion axis is horizontal and normal to the entry plane of the prostate phantom. For the rotating center of motion, the RCM module, we use software homing module to track the orientation of the needle. Here, we recap the step-by-step procedure of the HDR brachytherapy process. We have a patient, and then we create a 3D model of the patient anatomy using a CT scan. Then we computationally generate a needle plan and execute the plan autonomously using the AccuBot. After the implant, we CT scan to get the actual positions of the needles. We then calculate a final dose plan, and then we evaluate this plan against the planned dose distribution. Moving on to the results, the figure on the slide shows a prostate phantom with Skew-Line needle configuration implanted by the AccuBot. We compared the planned and actual implants based on dose distributions. We superimposed the needle configurations from planned and actual cases and then compared error. We found the error to be 1.8 and 2.8 mm respectively in two different cases. The error placement is correlated and a part of it can be attributed to robot to phantom registration. Furthermore, We were pleasantly surprised to discover that the performance of the robotic implant meets all of the clinical requirements, and we did not puncture any of the healthy structures in the process, as shown in the last row of the table. As a comparison, we also juxtaposed these results with an expert's implant for a similar prostate phantom. And as we see, the robot's implant is at par with the expert's performance as well. This is a proof of concept study, and there are problems we would like to solve as we go forward. Some of the main ones that we want to focus our attention to is efficiently searching the robot workspace for populating the generation set of needles, detecting heterogeneity and deformation using force sensing and imaging feedback during insertion time, and algorithms for prostate immobilization for better placement accuracy. To sum it up, we applied algorithmic approach to prostate cancer treatment. This is one of the first physical evaluations of the NPIP framework for needle computation. We improved the degree of automation in treatment, and the proposed system's performance is shown to be at par with experts in experimental conditions. Thank you very much for your time and attention.